Hello and welcome to the Spiraling Higher podcast, hosted by me, Sam, mindset and manifestation coach.
And me, Gina, your biz and mindset coach. We're here to support you on your spiritual journey by bringing you intimate and raw conversations about healing, manifestation, consciousness, and spirituality.
We hope this podcast makes you feel less alone as you become aware of your patterns and limiting beliefs to up-level your life, manifest like a boss, and together, spiral higher. Okay, welcome back, Spiralers. This is a super exciting moment for me because one of my best friends is meeting my other best friend. Gina, meet Kristen. Kristen, meet Gina.
Hello. Hi, guys. Hi, Gina. I know it's so weird because me and Gina feel like we know each other.
Totally,
through DMs, but also just like through Sam. So it's a very interesting relationship where I'm like, I know so much about you, Gina, but like, hi, I'm meeting you for the first time.
Totally. It's like Love is Blind without talking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sam,
it's literally that.
Sam is our pod.
I am mediating the conversation between the wall.
Yes.
This is so exciting because obviously you all, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you're familiar with me, you're familiar with Gina, but you may or may not be familiar with Kristen, who has an incredible following online for teaching people about the fear of being seen. She is an incredible inner child healer, and she's an amazing coach and a retreat host as well. And I was connected to you, Kristen, last year. Actually, you asked me to come onto your podcast.
I know. And it's actually a full circle moment, Sam, because when we did our episode, I was actually weirdly at my parents' house too. I think I was visiting, and like I'm here again.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, this is so weird, you know? Like I'm exactly the place that I met you, but I'm on your podcast this time. And honestly, I just feel like I feel like I've come so far since then. So this is a beautiful moment for me, just like realizing that.
Ooh, it's giving Quantum Leap, new fresh timeline. And looking back, I do remember you were in your parents' house. And I'm so glad we're having this conversation and reflection because, babe, you were at your rock bottom back then.
I think I was at the lowest of the lows when I actually interviewed you. Like I remember that moment and I remember what we were talking about. And I was rock bottom. There was nowhere to go but up. So I'm definitely doing better as one does. And yeah, I'm so excited to just like be on the other side of that quantum leap.
Yeah. And to hopefully share with all of our listeners today what really catalyzed that. Because you, to me, and Gina knows this about you because I talk about you all the time, but you are someone who freaking walks the walk. Like there are a lot of people online who are talking the talk and just yapping their mouths and telling everyone what to do, but not embodying it, not living in the truth, not walking the line. And since knowing you in person and online and bridging that relationship, I just know through our personal experiences how much you live what you teach. And I think people can feel that in your content. And so I would love for you to take us back. I mean, this really is a full circle moment to last year when we met. You were at this rock bottom. Tell us how you felt, because I think that people could listen to this and hear like, wow, like that's where I'm at, or I remember being there, but hopefully feel inspired by the fact that you are like so far from that person that you were only a year ago.
Yeah. Thank you so much for giving this the space, because I think that rock bottoms are an inevitable and very transformative time in everyone's life. And I would love to reframe that for anyone who is in a rock bottom. It is actually it's a new beginning, and it's a new way that your soul is trying to bring you to a new vibration, but it's just bringing you to a new vibration through releasing a lot of density, which is like limiting beliefs about yourself. Basically what a rock bottom is, if you're not familiar too. Sorry, I turn everything into a teaching moment, but like,
please do.
It's like when this rug has been pulled out from under you, and all of a sudden you are in a new timeline that you maybe didn't choose. So my personal rock bottom was through a very traumatic breakup where I got no closure. There was no ending. And I was like in a 4-year relationship. We were, looking at a house together. And then one afternoon, we looked at a house in the morning. In the afternoon, we we were no longer together, and he was on a plane to the other side of the country. And we never talked. Ever since that day, we still haven't had to sit down because he didn't want to. So it was very, very, very traumatic. And it took me, honestly, a long time to find the closure within myself. And so I was like living this life, you know, you have a timeline, you have a dog with this person, you have a whole life with them, and then all of a sudden you don't. And since then, I mean, the question was like, how did I feel? When you're in that really low period, it's like, honestly, you can't see a way out. There's so much grief. The frequency is so low that it feels like you're wearing 1,000 pounds of armor on your body at all times. It's like you can't find the present moment because your brain is only going into the past. It's like only going into survival. You're just like, I don't know how this is going to end, right? And so I felt really, really, really lost, to be honest. And even looking back at that version of me, it's so funny because like I don't even think I knew who I was outside of that relationship. Like I would even be like, I don't know how I dress because I would dress like he liked me to dress, or I was like, I don't know how I do my hair or my makeup. Like even down to the smallest things, I think that, you know, it's easy just to lose yourself in relationships. And I never thought I was the type of girl that did that. But now looking back and seeing how far I've come and how much of my own person I've become, I'm like, oh my gosh, my soul needed to go through that because this last year is like the epitome of a spiritual experience. Like the way I describe it is I was shattered on the floor. I was 1,000 pieces all over the floor, and I picked up all the pieces shard by shard and found the missing piece and glued it back together one by one. And now that I feel glued back together, I'm like so much stronger. I feel unbreakable, unshakable. And I'm like, no one will ever fucking break me like that again because I single-handedly put myself back together. So that's just a little bit of what I felt like in the past year.
Honestly, the two words that come to my mind right now are fuck yeah, because you single-handedly put yourself back together. And I truly believe that we do experience these things, like you said, to be introduced to a new timeline, a new frequency, to shed the old beliefs and narratives that we have about ourselves. But ultimately to realize that we will always have ourselves. And if you get yourself through an extremely hard time, you have this like rock solid evidence now that you're going to be able to get yourself through anything. And that's something that I know about you to be true, Kristen, is that you walk through this world with the sense of like, dude, like I'm unshakable. Come on, universe, like give me literally the worst shit and like I will alchemize it. Like it's fine because I'm a powerful creator.
Yeah. And I think that what I've learned from my soul has taught me this year is that self-security is the most powerful frequency.
Yes.
And that comes in all forms, right? Like self-security with not needing to be in relationship with someone, whether it be a friendship or a romantic relationship. Self-security with money. Like I don't need money to feel secure. I am the root of my security. And seeing how that's played out, like I've literally 3 timed my business income. I really blew my podcast up. I've blown my entire business up. Like I have so many soul friendships now. I'm like, it's because my vibration is different, you know?
Totally.
Yeah. Oh my God. Well, actually, something I wanted to say was that I truly believe that self-security is the only form of security, right? Because trying to find security through money and relationships is actually still insecurity. So, of course, finding security within the self is like the highest vibration because it's the ultimate form of self-trust.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing, that self-security is the only kind of security there really is. And I think at the end of the day, we always, in the beginning, tend to outsource that to other people. And I think we have to go through those breakups or go through the season where we lose all the money so that we can learn that was never security to begin with. I love rock bottom stuff. And I think instead of thinking of it as rock bottom, it's really just a launch pad. If you think of like a rocket ship, it has to start at the bottom. It can't like start launching from midair. And so when we think of rock bottom and see it instead as a launching pad for that next leap, I mean, it's hard to see it that way when you're in it, of course, but I love it when I go into these darkest places because it forces you to look in places you would never look. It forces you to think things you would never think. It forces you to do this inner work that you would never do if everything was fine, right? Like you just wouldn't have done any of this stuff if he stayed with you and you guys bought that house. It would have been completely different.
1,000%. It really forces you to find, there were so many days where I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but guess what? I did.
Exactly.
And that is the deepest form of self-trust. Like I genuinely believe in my soul. I'm like, nothing can shake me now, because no matter what it is, I will get through it, because you have to practice getting through things. I think sometimes people are like, oh, like, why don't I have self-trust? Like, why don't I like have confidence in myself? And I'm like, well, you don't put yourself in situations, this one I didn't choose, but like, you also have to put yourself in curated stressful situations to show yourself, oh, I always make it through. Oh, I always am going to get on the other side. And I think from a combination of that rock bottom, but also just continually putting myself in situations with it, whether it's in business or friendships or just personal development, where I have to get through it on my own. It's like, I don't know. It's just, you become really close to your soul. I know that's a weird thing to say, but like, you're just like, it's me and you, baby. And we're going to ride,
Totally.
We're gonna ride. No, I love that so much that you said that you put yourself in these situations where you show yourself you're gonna pull through. I mean, it's really giving courage. It's giving Aries. And if you guys didn't know, Kristen is also an Aries. But, people are so afraid to take these risks and really bet on themselves. And then they never get to show themselves that they can pull through. And so they actually reinforce the story that they can't get through things. And if that's the story, then why would you want to try a new difficult like a different thing? Why would you want to do that if you don't think you get through it? But speaking of getting through it, I would love for you to try to explain as best as you can what began to really move the needle. So it's a year ago, you told us you felt like you had 1,000 pounds of armor on you, and all of us have been there. What started to push you forward? How did you get closer to your soul?
I'm not going to lie. I sat in the grief and in I'm going to say victimhood for a long time. And I actually don't think that victimhood is a bad thing either. Like, I think that we are all inevitably going to be there and sit there for a little bit. And like, we should just let ourselves do that when we need to do that. And then I remember it when you said, like, what was the thing that came to mind was there was a defining moment. And I was so sick of being sad that there was no choice but to look to see that I had to just choose something else. One decision, I remember it. I actually woke up in the middle of the night. I actually asked let me actually tell the story, because it's a good story. So
Please.
I remember I was visiting my sister, and all the trips had been really traumatic because like we were so used to traveling together and I hadn't been used to traveling alone. And I remember I was being miserable on this family trip. Like I was just crying, like I was sad. And this was like 6 months in. So like this had been a while. And I remember just like almost floating outside of my body and observing myself going on this family trip. I hadn't seen my family in like 6 months, maybe, going on this family trip and just like moping around and being sad and realizing that like, I don't know if I'm ever going to see my family again after, like, this could be the last time that I see my family. Like something could happen. Like, I just remember my higher self took me out of my body for a second and showed me that like what I was observing myself through someone else's eyes. And I just remember not liking myself and just being like, when did I become this sad girl? Like, when did I become this girl that just cries all the time and just doesn't have a joy or a zest for life? And I was crying so hard that night. And I remember asking my guides, I call it like my council of light. I was just like, you can ask your guides in dream time to help you figure stuff out that you maybe can't figure out on your own. So I usually only resort to this when I'm really struggling because I forget most of the time, but I remembered this night. And I was like, guides, please help me. Please, please, please help me figure this out. Please help me have a mindset shift. I need to get over this lesson. And I remember I was sleeping in the guest bedroom of my sister's house. I remember exactly where I was. I jolted awake in the middle of the night. And I just had this thought in my head that says, you need to find your own happiness. You can't be miserable forever. And I remember I woke up the next day and I had the first good day in probably months. And it was because like I decided to. And I think that sometimes I say this and it can be a little bit triggering to my clients, but I'm like, honestly, if you're not changing, you're just not miserable enough. And I stand behind it. I stand behind that. Because for
Mm.
me, I could have changed months earlier, but I wasn't miserable enough. I wasn't miserable enough until I was miserable enough. And then I said, I'm making a fucking change.
Really? Yeah, because you have to have this catalyst. Like it's kind of like it's so uncomfortable to sit in that kind of liminal space where we're not really doing anything. But that's also comfortable. It's like this weird, it's like a comfort in the uncomfortableness, but then sometimes we need to get so uncomfortable, like you said, for that kind of fire to light in us. And it kind of gets to this point where you're like, enough is enough. Enough.
Exactly. Exactly. And I've actually talked to a lot of people going through grief. And I think it's actually a very common symptom that when you start to feel better, you feel further away from that person. So it actually
Mhm.
feels worse temporarily. You're like,
Yeah.
I shouldn't be feeling better because then it means I'm over it and then I'm disconnected from them.
Mhm.
And I had to go through that a couple times of like feeling better and being like, wait, like, am I okay? I feel better. Like it was, you know what I mean? It was
Yes.
weird to feel better.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We actually had a grief expert come onto the podcast, this woman, Ashley Nelson, who talked about how this is so tragic, but she lost her husband and then didn't she get remarried and then lose her second
Yeah.
husband?
I think it was actually right before they got married.
It was her
Yeah.
fiance. They were planning to get married. And so this like double tragedy within several years of each other. And she talked about that with us about how the grief feels like a way that you stay connected to the person and the experience. And
Mhm.
you actually become attached to that state. Because if you are to move on, it may even trigger a sense of survivor's guilt. And so, yeah, definitely what you're saying, I think a lot of people can level with that when they get to a rock bottom, they don't even want to move on. It feels like a part of them because then it's like, wow, it's really over. But I want to talk more about this decision to be happy because I don't think people realize how they really are just one decision away from literally a new reality. Like you can have a new thought right this effing second, and all of a sudden you're experiencing a whole different version of your life. But can we talk about that and like how it triggers your clients and how you move them through that? Because, yeah, I can admit if I was in my darkest of days right now, and I heard from you just radiating with light and positivity and confidence tell me, you can just choose to be happy today. I might be like, I don't think that's true. Right? That could really trigger me. And so let's like lovingly explore that together for our listeners because I think, yeah, people don't realize the conscious power of choice, right? I would even say consciousness is the ability to choose. And you actually said something about that sooner about how like you started making choices. So, yeah, let's talk about making choices and changing our reality with a single thought.
You know, it's interesting to explore this. I think that the way I want to honestly open this for anyone who's struggling with this is that I absolutely think it's necessary to feel whatever sadness or grief for as long as I'm not going to say as long as you need, but like for whatever your heart needs,
Mhm.
right? This is also where I call this to my clients like a bullshit radar, where you have to be kind of like have your bullshit radar on and say like, when is enough enough? And you know in your gut when enough is enough. You know when you felt the feelings, you know when you cried it out, you know when you're sitting in victimhood, right? And I think that this is the point where you have to choose to attach to a vision of the future versus something in the past that you can't control. And this is actually what helped me choose. I remember having the thought, if I only believe that my life is going to get good as my past was and it can't get any better in the future, I am never going to get over this. So I had to
Yeah.
choose in that moment. I am deciding that my future is going to be better than whatever I experienced in the past, even if I can't see it yet. And so I think that this has to be almost like a conscious exploration of potentials, right? I think
Yes.
honestly, you have to say, okay, so what's the first option? The first option is I really just am hung up on this for the rest of my life and I never get over it, right? That sounds miserable. And you say my second option is as I accept this, I accept it, which is such a powerful state to be in is acceptance. accepting everything. I accept this breakup. I accept this rock bottom. I accept that I lost my job. I accept whatever the really sad reality is. I accept that my dog died. I accept that I'm going through this death. And I'm deciding in this moment that I'm still going to build a beautiful life for myself.
Acceptance is so hard for people to understand, I think, at first, because as soon as you hear somebody say, accept the breakup, accept this person has passed, accept the job loss, I think what they hear is like it. Like you have to like it and be happy about it. But acceptance is not liking it or being excited and enjoying it. It's just accepting that this is what's happening and are arguing of that and saying this should be different. It shouldn't have happened. I shouldn't be this way. That's what creates our suffering. So acceptance really is saying this is happening and then fill in the blank. And I'm going to sit with this for now. And I want to believe that it's possible to feel better. And I'm going to choose to believe that this is for my highest good. So it's being able to be with that, not argue with it. And then, like you said, make a decision of how you want to move from that place.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sam.
And I love how you said, Kristen, that this is really a conscious choice to explore possibilities, because what I tell my clients all the time is we are engaging in a new skill, and that is possibility thinking, right? Because so much of our suffering is actually this illusory belief in like two possibilities. It's like, my life sucks forever, right? Or some other option. But it's so limiting to believe that nothing ever gets better. And think about it. If you did really believe that nothing ever gets better, of course you create the experience of things not getting better, right? You find evidence for your belief. And so we have to start with believing, okay, maybe like 1%, 2%, 3%, there is a possibility of something I have not seen. And so what I love about your share is that you decided, no, actually the future is going to be better. And that actually wasn't you knowing with 100% certainty. It was you deciding to put your energy into that potentiality. Like that's a possibility in the universe, given that all possibilities are available right now. But I am putting infinite, right? But I am deciding to put all of my focus and attention on that one. Because yes, it's also a possibility that like nothing gets better for sure, right? But where are you going to put your energy? And you consciously decided to put yours into the possibility and now the reality that the future gets better.
Yeah, and I think that the ultimate goal for the creator, source, God, whatever you want to call it, to have fractalized into zillions of pieces is to find itself again. So what better way to find itself than, go through something really traumatic and then realize on the other side, oh, I can actually create a better reality than this. Like, it's so funny. I was walking on the beach with my best friend one day and I was having a really good day. It was actually my birthday this year. And I was like, God, I'm like so happy. Like I feel so grateful for the people in my life. And I remember saying I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud. And my past version of myself would literally die if she heard me saying this. But I said, losing yourself and finding yourself, it's kind of fun.
Kind of underrated.
I kind of see why God does this over and over and over again.
Totally. Yeah. Well, the way I see it is like, that's what we all come here to do. We literally come here to forget and remember. Like, that's the assignment. It's like, you go to Earth, you forget, just so you can play the game of remembering. Because it feels like, and Gina and I have talked about this, but think about a reunion. Like, how fucking sweet a reunion feels. Like, honestly, Kristen, when I see you in California this summer, it's going to be so sweet because we haven't seen each other since last year. And so I think about that self reunion, that reunion of soul.
Ultimate.
Oh my, it's the ultimate. And so we have to lose it. We have to forget who we are. And so I actually want to go back to something you said earlier, which was this idea of being close to your soul, because something you talk about a lot in your content is this idea that what your soul wants ain't necessarily going to be what your ego wants. And I think suffering is really when your soul and your ego are having a fist fight, right? Your ego wants something to be a certain way so badly and is so attached, but your soul is like, bitch, I want expansion. I want creativity. Like, I want growth. So let's talk about that fist fight between soul and ego, because I feel like you do such a great job of this. And yeah, like, how do you work through with your clients when their ego is really attached to something, but you can tell it's like their soul is begging for something greater?
Yeah. Something that I really try to hone in on is that we're here not to just like play, like we're here to become masters, right? And mastery requires holding the higher perspective while going through the human emotions. And I think that's actually the answer of it is when you are experiencing resistance, which is your human doesn't like the way things are, your ego doesn't like the way things are, you have to practice adopting the perspective of the higher self or even of the source. You can go however high up you want, right? Um, the truth is that when we contracted as souls like to be down here, we didn't choose to see all of the potentials and how it would play out. And so it is part of the game, right?
Mm.
And I think that that is how you work through that is asking yourself, even though I can't see how this is for my highest good, can I trust that my soul knows what it's doing, right? Your soul is here to have an adventure. That's the only reason what your soul wants. Like your soul wants an adventure, and you can't create adventure from like imagine if every single thing in your life turned out exactly how you thought it would. You'd kind of honestly be like,
So boring.
low key, it's kind of boring here. Like I think something's going to happen and then it happens. But like I'm sure every single person here has gone through such a big curveball, but then like on the other side of it, you're like, low key, it honestly turned out better than I thought it would, right? And so I think it requires like massive trust with your soul, like creating this relationship of like, I trust you, I trust the source. And then also, yeah, I think it's all about duality. Like I don't think that we have to always hold the higher perspective. I think it's about mastering being in the human, but holding the higher perspective at the same time.
I totally agree. Something I always tell my clients to do and something that I started to do to build that trust is start this truth journal. And the truth journal is something that you really can't argue with because it's, in essence, it's facts where looking at the truth journal would be looking at all the things in your life that didn't go the way that you thought they were going to go. And then they did turn out better. And then you can write things like, what I know is that there have been experiences in my life where the thing didn't work out and it did work out better. What I know is that I've not trusted before, and that led me to a deeper trust. What I know is that even though I really, really want this thing, that I've also wanted that thing before, and then it ended up being something I didn't want. And building up this evidence, this kind of library of evidence can start to really help us to build that inner trust because it is really hard because we do think we want a relationship right now. Like it sucks that I'm alone or why can't I have that job right now? And I think people get really obviously really attached and get really confused about manifestation because from where I sit now, I'm like, I don't want it if it's not the perfect time. Like, don't give it to me if it's not the most ideal time. And it really goes into that deep knowing of this or something better. I want this or the something better. And I want it in the most aligned time. And so I always tell the universe, like, give me this, but if it's not for me, just take it away. Like, I want this experience, but if it's not for me, please never give it to me. And so when I don't get the thing, I'm equally as thankful as getting the thing. It's like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And it goes into the thing that we've all heard, which is that rejection is protection. It's redirection. And so instead of seeing it as rejection, I see it as the universe seeing me and looking out for me.
Yeah. And it's funny because personally, optimism, like thinking that way actually isn't my default. And I've had to train myself into becoming a more optimistic person. And it's interesting because like I found myself having to study optimistic people. Like I would literally look at my friend who's really optimistic and be like, wow, like she really always does believe that the highest good is always unfolding. And the reason I'm saying this is because I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that like optimism actually isn't their default either. It's not mine. So I think what I'm trying to say is sometimes you have to train yourself.
Totally. I think I'm probably more in the 10% that are more naturally, but Sam and I have talked about this, that I think some of that comes from my upbringing and being in church and kind of believing, yeah, in having this faith. And I also think I had such a sad like childhood and like lonely childhood that for me, I had to believe it gets better. Like it's actually like I just had to believe that there must be a reason for this. And for so long, I mean, even now I love pain. Again, going through it, always hard, but I'm always believing that the bigger the pain, the bigger the gift. And so I don't know. It's just like this default mode for me, but I can totally see that for a lot of people, it isn't. And I love what you said though, because even for someone who might be more naturally optimistic, you still need to practice this. It is still a skill to be able to train our bodies, to train our minds to look for that path instead of looking for the problem and more reasons to be right about the problem. So even someone who's, has this baked in faith or ability to see things in a higher perspective, I think we all need to practice it.
Yeah. And I think this
Yeah.
is just another way that you become the creator. Like you
Yes.
have to realize if you look up, you're going to see the sky. If you look down, you're going to see the ground. Like, where do you want to look? You get to choose, you get to decide.
Yo, I've never heard you say that before. That was pretty fire. I like that. Holy shit. I really like that. I did not grow up with a very religious background or even spiritual background. And so I was raised pretty agnostic, maybe even atheist. Like I didn't really believe in anything or have this concept of faith. And I relied a lot on logic to get through most of my life. But what's interesting is that when I discovered the work that I teach now, which is essentially that you experience your perceptions, right? Change your perceptions, you change what you experience. I realized that choosing to believe in the best case scenario wasn't necessarily believing in something correct at that time. It's more like, how does believing in the best is yet to come impact your state of being and behavior? Like that's what I'm interested in more now is, okay, what is my belief doing to my internal world? And how is that internal world now creating results in my outer world? And so I actually decided to become an optimist, not because I believed it was like the more right, correct way to live, but I just realized, oh, I'm going to get better results. Because interesting, when I believe that nothing good ever happens to me and my life always sucks and turns out this way, then it impacts my internal world in such a way that I don't take action. Like I just continue to maintain this quote unquote status quo. And I was like, oh, so it's not really even about the belief. Like the belief is almost neither here nor there. It's about what the belief does to you internally. And so, yeah, I'm kind of curious about some more beliefs that you picked up along the way, Kristen, in the last year that you really use. Because you totally are like an affirmations girly, I feel.
I'm actually, I don't think I like use affirmations like most people do, but I definitely believe in the power of your thoughts creating your reality. And if you guys don't know, like if you're new to me, I'm a huge Joe Dispenza girly. Like it's literally, I love Joe Dispenza because he helped me so much through that rock bottom through my thoughts. And after going to, a couple of his week-long retreats, you actually learn the science behind it. And it actually doesn't become this fluffy spiritual, like, oh, if you think good thoughts, then you're going to have better experiences. Like, no, it's literally scientifically proven, like through several studies. And, I have a Virgo moon for any of the astrology girlies. It really helped me be like, oh, like my thoughts like do really matter. Right.
Yes.
So I do work with beliefs, but what I work with is I work with core beliefs. I'm not really like affirming things every day, but I try to find the places where my core beliefs are impacting my reality. And core beliefs are basically like very big beliefs that are impacting your world, that are in your subconscious mind. And like to give you an example of one, I have this core belief that I teach to my clients when we're working on like business stuff. I genuinely have a core belief that everything that I say is valuable. Like that's just my core belief. And when I gave myself that core belief and did some inner child work on it and just told my inner child, like everything that you say is valuable, literally everything that you come out of your mouth is gold. People just want to hear what you say. My business blew up, my podcast blew up, my reels do good because I believe that everything I say is valuable. So I get that experience, the mirror reflection of everything I say being valuable.
Absolutely. Well, and again, like what is that belief doing for your inner world, right? It's validating your literal human existence and things that you say. So, of course, you're going to say more things, you're going to impact more people, you are going to create more. And so now you're getting incredible results. It's so interesting working with so many clients. And I know we've all heard from one-on-one clients different beliefs, especially core beliefs. And the things that I learn are so intriguing. Like I had this one client where we uncovered this core belief that she really believes that she's like destined for a bad life.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Like, I don't want to judge that belief. I want to get so deeply curious about that belief and, of course, what it creates for you because, Yeah, I mean, think about it. If you did believe that you were destined for a bad life, what kind of behaviors would that create? And she had a lot of like overcompensating behavior, right? Like a lot of needing to overachieve, like a lot of needing to prove yourself. And it's like, well, of course, like if you believe that you're destined for badness, then you have to prove your greatness. As opposed to what we teach is like, what if you're already great? Right? Now, how do you live your life? Now, how do you go about creating those projects and those things that you want to create? It's like, it's a totally different energy. And I think, Kristen, you already know this, but it's actually not about what you do. It's about who you're being.
Yes.
1,000%. It's all about who you're being, and who you're, even just to break down what you said further, it's like you have these thoughts and then they create an emotion inside of your body. So if you're always believing, oh my gosh, like, oh, like I'm just destined for a bad life, I'm so unlucky, how do you think that's going to make you feel? It's going to make you feel hopeless. It's going to make you feel like less than. It's going to make you feel worthless. And then what happens is that you are literally giving that vibrational signature to the universe and calling those experiences to you with your intention of your vibrational signature, right? And so you're just creating that experience over and over again. And then the actions that you take are reflective. It's just like this rabbit hole. Beliefs are just so important. They're just so important.
So important. Something I tell my clients a lot is they don't like to hear this, and even my listeners probably don't either, but the universe is a perfect feedback system. No errors. Like it's perfect. And that's a good thing, right? Because people say to me all the time, or have said in the past, like, I don't believe manifestation is real. I'm like, perfect. You just proved yourself that it is real. Because now you're creating evidence for yourself that you think is proving to you that it's not real. But you're actually just proving your own, you're just proving that the belief that you think creates the experience that you're having. So you're still proving that it's real, but you're focusing on a different result, right? You're focusing on a different outcome, right? It's kind of like what we talked about earlier. You can believe that the future is going to be great, or you can believe the future is going to be bad. You're going to prove either one of those correct based on your focus and attention and your aligned actions. And so what I feel we do for people is not give them powerful creative abilities. They already have those. Right? We're almost just like reorienting which side of the spectrum they use that power from.
100%.
It's like you're already doing it. You're already emanating these powerful beliefs and taking actions in alignment with them. Let's use that power. Let's use that incredible awareness, bring it over here and focus it and shoot it out into the universe where all those infinite possibilities exist to create more greatness. Because I'm so sad thinking about people not using their creative abilities to create what they desire, because you're using them regardless.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, do you want to use your power for good or for evil?
Or for evil.
Yeah. And something I also want to say is that like, I'm just hearing some critics in my mind of being like, well, I can focus on it, but it doesn't change the reality. Like, no, what we're saying is that like where you focus actually is impacting the reality that you're calling to you. Like I really needed to hear that. So I'm going to say that it's like, you're going to get a different outcome when you're focusing on different things. Like you're literally going to call in a better life. And there's this really, really amazing study. There's this really amazing study on the power of intention in Joe Dispenza's book, and he also teaches it at his retreats. And it's like the first one in the book. And it basically there was this scientist, and he wanted to see if chicks, little chickens, like the chicks, the babies, could affect a robot's path, right? So they put these baby chicks in a cage, and then the cage was next to like a big empty arena thing. And then in the arena, they put this robot that was programmed to go left 50% of the time and right 50% of the time. So basically just go back and forth. And he shows what it looks like when there's no baby chicks in the little cage next to it. And the robot is just going left, right, left, right. It's basically going all around the facility, covering the whole area. And then they put the baby chicks in and they let the baby chicks hatch. Or I guess they put eggs in and then they let the baby chicks hatch. And the first thing that the baby chicks saw was the robot. So they thought that the robot was its mother and they imprinted on this mother. And obviously chickens want to be near their mother, right? And then they put the robot, they turned it on, and then they had it go. And it literally only went to the one side of the arena. And the whole premise is that if little baby chickens' brains can change and create a difference, a 3D difference in this robot that's programmed, and it's literally changing the program of this robot, imagine what your human brain can do if you just put some intention in your life. Like you really use your brain for good. Like you can literally change 3D matter.
Wow.
Dude, I hadn't heard about that study.
Really?
I hadn't.
Life-changing.
And I'm a Daddy Joe stan. That is crazy.
Daddy Joe stan.
Daddy
Oh,
Joe
yeah.
stan.
I
And
also call him
honestly,
Daddy Joe.
I do believe that we have these incredible supercomputers in our minds. And it breaks my heart like how many years I like wasted it thinking about like how to be skinnier, you know? Like there was just so many other things I could have done. But that's the thing. Like our programming is to constantly focus on your insecurities and not enoughness rather than everything that you are and everything that is possible for you to create. And so yeah, I'm with you. If baby chicks can do it, we definitely
I
can.
know. At first, when
We
you said
definitely
chicks, I was
can.
like girls,
Like girls?
like hot
and then you're
chicks.
like babies, like chickens.
I know. I was like, I feel like I need to like specify.
He did this study with hot chicks. Okay, wait. I actually want to bring it back a little bit because I can also hear the maybe not critics, but just people who really do want to change these core beliefs, AKA my past self, believing that everything you say is valuable. A lot of us say, yes, I want to believe that. I want to believe that. But we can't. Like, it's like we say it intellectually, but inside of our bodies, somatically, there's still this internal fear. So walk us through like what that journey was like for you. How deep was the core belief that you weren't, valuable in what you shared? And then how did that become an embodied belief for you? What was that journey like?
Yeah, so I use inner child work to shift my core beliefs. It's my favorite modality because I truly think that it's changed my life in so many ways. It's helped me gain confidence. It's helped me overcome the fear of being seen. It's helped me manifest things by raising my core vibration. I just like could go on and on about inner child work. I'm a big inner child work girly. And so I had this belief because a lot of times, I was the youngest, like my parents went through a divorce. There was just nobody to really listen to me. So I grew up thinking that my voice didn't matter. And then when I started my business, I realized, oh, if I don't think my voice matters, I'm never going to make a video. I'm never going to promote my services. I'm never going to feel confident. Like it was this thing that just triggered me when I made videos. And I was like, I got to figure out how to heal this. So that was when I really walked into my inner child journey. And for those of you guys who are not familiar with your inner child, it's basically your child self that lives, every version of you lives in your heart and in your soul somewhere, right? But when we're children, I mean, literally, this is like science. Your brain is forming. And while your brain is forming, your brain waves are theta, which are the brain waves of the subconscious mind. So anything that you're experiencing as a child is in that subconscious mind, and it's becoming a truth in your mind. It's like you're learning how to stay safe in the world. You're learning your beliefs about the world. You're basically an unprogrammed computer that's getting your software programming. That's how I like to say it. So when you're younger, you have these experiences, right? I had this experience where nobody wanted to listen to me. So my belief that formed was my voice doesn't matter, right? And so how are we supposed to change this as adults when it's in our subconscious mind? It's like down there, it's our subconscious mind is 95% of our brain, but it's not our conscious mind. So I can't just change it from saying, I want to think that my voice matters. I'm in my conscious brain right now. It's not going to change, right? So how I love to change it is I teach my clients how to get down into theta with I have a hypnosis that they use, or I do like sessions with them, and we go down to that childhood version of ourselves. We usually find that core memory and we talk to her. We literally talk to her and we ask her, why do you believe this? She typically shows us a memory, and then we rewrite the memory in our brain. We rewrite it of how we wanted it to go so that we have a new belief, right? If I really believed that my voice mattered, what would have happened instead? Oh, people would have listened to me. They would have asked me questions. My mom and dad would have told me your voice matters. Like you need to use your voice anytime you can, right? Your voice, everything that you say is so valuable. I want to hear what you have to say. Tell me, right? So I went down and told my inner child that. And what happened after that is because when we're in theta, when we're in this type of like hypnosis, your brain doesn't know what's made up and what's made up or what's real. So
Right.
it becomes truth to you. And then when you work with those core beliefs, I think that this is the part that I'm also really passionate about. You have to reinforce them through action. So I can't just go do my inner child meditation and get up and just be like, everything that I say is valuable, but I'm not going to change anything I do. No, I have to go take action and do the actions that would support my voice being valuable by making more videos, by using my voice, by speaking up when I need to, right? So I think that was a long way to say
So good.
I basically reprogrammed it and then I embodied the new belief.
Yeah, I think that really is speaking to the depth of the work, that it isn't, you know, if affirmations are not working for you, this is why, because it does require us to get still enough, like you said, to get into that state, first of all. And I do very similar things with my clients too, through breath work, through somatic work, to get into that part of us. Because these parts of us, these inner children, one of my teachers taught it as like this inner preschool of our and inside of our bodies of all of these different versions of our us, and we get to go back and reconcile and repair these scenarios that that version of us couldn't do. It just did not have the capacity to do. So I love how you explain that, because it really does, like I said, it speak to the depth that we get to go to in order to repair that and resolve that with our inner child. And then, like you said, the follow up to that is taking the action, acting as if, and that really goes to Joe Dispenza's work. Like, if you were the kind of person that believed your voice was valuable, what would you do? And you've shown us
Who
how
would
to
you
do that.
be?
Exactly. Who would you be? How would you
Yes.
act? What actions would you take?
What would you think?
Yes. What would you say yes to? Right. What would you actually show up for? And so I love that you said that. Thank you so much for sharing that story. Very helpful.
Yeah. And this leads me into a really good point, which is a lot of what Gina and I teach our clients. But every single business problem is a personal problem.
Every single business problem is
Literally every single one. There's actually, I've never heard my client actually bring me like a real business problem. Like, actually, most of the time, the business is fucking fine. Like, they have leads, they have clients, they have an offer, they know what they want to teach. It has nothing to do with the business and how the business is performing. It has everything to do with their core wounds acting up in the face of their marketing, right? They're suddenly judging and doubting themselves for how they show up. And so, yeah, I think you help a lot of people with this core wound of the fear of being seen, right? Because if you are going to run a business, right, you can't really do that in a silo. You need to show up online to the people who are going to benefit from your goods and or services. And you have to be a bit loud and proud about what you offer. And so how can you do that if you have the fear of being seen? I would love for you to talk a little bit about your work with the fear of being seen and what you've seen with your clients, and yeah, how you've helped them move through that, because it's so common. I think, yeah, everyone wants to show up, but nobody wants to feel the feeling.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, when you sign up to be an entrepreneur, you're signing up for the biggest spiritual journey of your life, whether you know it or not. Because if your business isn't growing, well, there's one common denominator and it's you, right? So your soul, like I like to say, like, when you're especially in a spiritual business, it's like you're co-creating with your soul and the soul of all these other people. And like now you have to actually do the work to clear out your density and your shit and your trauma so that you can let the business flow through you. So yeah, fear of being seen has been one of the biggest things that I've taught, because that was my biggest hang up when I started my business. Like, I remember I would try to go make a story or a reel and I would just like be shaking, like my hands would be shaking, like my palms would be sweaty. I would be so nervous to make a story, and then after I posted it, I would be sick to my stomach, and if I didn't get the likes I wanted, or if something negative, perceivingly negative happened, then I would sometimes delete it or just shut down my phone for days. Like, it was debilitating, honestly. And on top of that, I had actual friends at the time that were making fun of my Instagram. So it was even worse because I was navigating all of that. But what it really came down to was, the fear of being seen. It forms in childhood when we were shamed for being our authentic self. So now we create this core belief of like, oh, I have to hide to stay safe. And so anything that goes against the hiding, right, blasting yourself on social media for thousands and millions of people to judge you, does not feel safe. And so The way that I really work with this is through a lot of inner child work, which I already explained, right? Working with those core beliefs of like you working with that inner child and letting her know or him know you're so worthy of being seen. Like, even if other people don't like you or agree with you, like, I will always love you. I love your authentic self, like things like that. But the biggest one when it comes to fear of being seen is actually shadow work. And the way that I teach shadow work is a little bit different because I teach it with what are you avoiding being called, right? That's your shadow.
Yeah.
Are you avoiding being called a failure or cringe, or are you avoiding being called ugly? Like, what are the words that if you were called those words, it would feel like a knife to the heart, and it would just hurt you so bad, because those words hold a lot of shame for you, which is the lowest vibrational emotion. So your body and your brain will do anything to not be those words, because it doesn't want to feel shame. And also, the way that you actually overcome that is you integrate the shadow or take the charge away from the word, right? So,
Yes.
if I were to say, hey, Gina, like, you're such a bad poker player, like, that wouldn't hurt because your ego is not attached to that, right?
Yeah.
But if I said, Gina, spiraling higher literally blows, like, your ego is attached to that, which means that you have to like take the charge away for it. So you would want that to feel like the poker, right? You want it to feel like, okay, well, that's not true for me. So it's cool what you think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, the way we got here was by actually completely detaching from that. So if someone literally said spiraling higher blows, I'd be like, you're clearly not our target audience. Like, it actually feels like you're telling me I'm a bad poker player because we don't do this for like people's validation and approval. And honestly, everything you're saying, you've clearly read Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, look.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There we go.
Oh my God.
So freaking good,
So
man.
good.
Yeah. I do that with my clients too, where we have to think about like a scathing article being written about you.
Yeah.
And it's like, what words in the newspaper would you read that you'd be like horrified to be called out for? And yeah, people are like scared to even like say, like, they don't even want to get close to the word. Like,
Well,
and it's so interesting too. Like,
yeah.
it's so hard. And what's so interesting about when I do this in groups is like everyone picks such different ones too.
Yeah.
Right? Like someone's is like loud, right? And someone else is just like quiet. Someone else is just selfish. Someone else is just full of themselves, right? It's like there's so many different ones, and you can see how arbitrary it all is. But that obviously you had a childhood experience where you
got
experienced shame.
Yes.
Exactly. For being loud or for being quiet or for being selfish, whatever. And so, of course, like you said, and I think you said it so eloquently, but we'll do anything to avoid shame. Like,
even
literally
follow
anything.
our biggest dream.
Yes.
We'll
We
avoid
will give
following
up on literally our life.
Yeah.
Yeah, to avoid shame. And so I love that you said that. And I think both of those are so powerful and go hand in hand, the shadow work and the inner child. Oh my God. So good.
Yeah, I think this actually brings us back to the beginning of what we said, which is that self-security is security. I think that's what this really points to, is getting to the place where you can be secure within yourself, and secure in those shadows, and see them again as that launching pad. And anytime somebody, because we've all felt that, right, in these sessions where someone's kind of dancing around this worst case scenario or dancing around what they're afraid of. And truly the way to overcome fear is it's through it. It's going right into it and looking right at that and actually unpacking what's underneath it, because underneath the shame is actually a very beautiful intent. Really beautiful. If we're ashamed of being stupid, or we fear that we're going to be stupid, what's underneath that is that I just want to be able to bring value. I want to be able to help someone. And when we can kind of unpack that and see the inner child saying, I'm just trying to do this, and we can lean into that, it softens it a lot. And for anyone who does experience intense shame, which I think we all do at some point, the thing that's, I think, been the most healing, I think I can say for all of us, is sharing shame, sharing what we're ashamed of. Yeah, opening it up and looking at it, not keeping it in secret, because in keeping it in secret, it insinuates you should keep it secret and you should continue to feel shame around it. But I think the most healing conversations that Sam and I have had is when I just tell her exactly what I'm ashamed of. And even as I say it, I'm like, oh, I know it's stupid. I know it's this. And she's like, just spit it out. And once it comes out and it's held by this other being with so much love, you can instantly see that, oh, Oh, it's okay. And again, in sharing it, it's actually what allows other people to share their shame. And it just becomes this domino ripple effect of releasing it.
I totally agree. And yeah, I mean, I've had, honestly, one of my biggest shadows. I don't know why I feel called to share this, but I'm going to share it.
Do it. Share the shadow.
Share the shadow.
I've shared it plenty of times with my audience, but I feel like, I don't know, it really helped me when I was starting my business. So one of my biggest shadows with just being my authentic self and like loving my authentic self is I actually got made fun of when I was in 5th grade by a boy that I thought was cute because of my skin color, and he called me Asian. And I had a lot of shadow around who I was. And I had to do so much shadow work to like accept this part of me and be like, you're so beautiful and like you are so unique, and like this is actually the reason that a lot of people love you. And the reason I wanted to say this is because as soon as I healed that, like I was getting the reflection of people loving me as much as I was giving love to myself. But before, I did feel like I was kind of attracting the experience of like people not loving me because like of course, like I was creating that experience. But something else that helped me that I kind of want to give to the audience as like I don't know, a brain gift is like, I found people that looked like me that were doing what I wanted to do.
Yes.
And doing it so eloquently and doing it with grace. And like, I thought they were cool. Right. And it was almost like I stole, like I borrowed their confidence and was like, well, if she's doing it and like she's Asian and she's also this, like they were very similar to my ethnicity. It almost like gave me permission to love myself because I loved them. So
yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you shared that. And it really does come down like to all the freaking childhood experiences, right? Because I had a very different experience. I wasn't bullied for being Asian, but definitely there were times where I felt excluded. But then I went home and told my mom, and she was like, "They're just jealous. Like they all look." She was like, "Honey, they all look the same, okay? Like, and you look so different and unique." So, and I was like, "Oh, yeah. Well, I guess since mom knows everything,
Wow.
yeah, I guess they're just jealous." So what's so funny is like I internalized this belief that if people were like mean to me about my Asianness, I'm like they just want to be me. That's fine. Like I'm not even kidding. Like that's what my mom made me believe.
No, Sam, we know you have crazy confidence.
She literally was just like, they all look the same. That's why they're jealous. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a good point.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm like the only one that looks different. That makes sense. And I just internalized it.
That makes a lot of sense. I love your mom for that. I mean, that's kind of what I do with my daughter, but maybe not in that direct way. But my experience was a lot more like Kristen's. Like I was raised in such tiny Asian town or non-ethnic towns. They were all just very white.
I mean, me too.
Yeah, but like I didn't have that conversation. I just felt like shit and then went home and cried about it by myself. So I didn't have my mom saying they're just jealous. I was more just jealous of them. Like, wait, I want to look like
your
them.
mom's a G.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. Were you going to say something else, Sam?
No, I just find it really funny. Like we obviously all had such like varying experiences, but it just goes to show like what wounds develop, right? Because I have totally different ones, right? Like I would say my biggest shadow, and Gina knows, dude, if someone comes from my intelligence, like my Gemini rising is like defending to the death.
Yeah, it's
like
the stupid wound.
And like, yeah, like I'm like, no, I'm smart and I will prove my smartness. Like, and I will do well on tests. Like that's my wound. And of course that's because my mom wasn't like, you're so smart, babe. Right. It was like, you're like not smart enough. Like, why are these kids doing better than you? Right. So, but in terms of like my looks or like my skills, my mom was like, oh, they're just jealous. And I was like, oh.
I want to point out though, Sam, this is actually such a good inner child learning moment for anybody who's interested in inner child work. So we all had the same experience, but how it basically, how do I say this? We all had the same experience, but Sam got what her inner child needed to still feel worthy, and I didn't. And Gina didn't, right? And so this is a beautiful way of like, honestly, I probably needed someone to come into me and just be like, they're just jealous of you. You know what I mean? But like, I didn't have that. So when you have inner child work, you have the ability to go and be that mother that you needed, but you never had in that moment. And it's like, I had a shadow and inner child wound that formed, and Sam didn't, because she actually got what her inner child needed, which was validation for who she was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is so true. Because Gina and I have talked about this so much, but like I do not have the fear of being seen. Like that is just.
Are you sure?
We know.
That is just like not one of my things. Like I dream of like being on stage and like in TV and movies.
No,
I'm
I
like,
think
everyone needs to look at me.
the most visceral example of this, and maybe we've shared this on the pod before, but her and I went to this conference, and it's, I don't even know, hundreds of people in the audience. And we're kind of sitting in the middle near the back, and the guy at the front is like, okay, like, do we have any volunteers to kind of share their story? Like, how long you've been in business? And I'm like sinking down in my chair, and Sam's just like, and I look over and I'm like, what do you, they can see you.
Put your hand down.
Put your hand down. They might see you. She's like, every time. And I realized in that moment, wow, we're so different. But yeah, to your point, we all do have different wounds. Sam never has had that. And to be frank, I think in the context of our relationship, that has actually been one of my biggest triggers, is because like my deepest wound is not hers at all. And when you see somebody out there that's doing the thing that you so deeply want to do and doing it with zero problems and zero attachment to any sort of wounds, it can be really hard. However, it's also been how I've been able to heal through this wound. But I love what you said, Kristen, because what you said was to find somebody that looks and feels like you and see that they're doing it. And that kind of was what Sam became for me. However, I also did have the belief that's kind of true, that it was so easy for her and that it should be easy for me. But when we started to unpack that even deeper and understand why it's easy for her, it gave me so much more compassion for myself. When I saw how little support I had to express my voice, when I really went back and saw how many times I was told, don't be like that, don't be like you need to be like someone else, I had so much more compassion and understanding for why it was so hard. And so I love that you, gave the examples of being able to see the difference in our upbringings and how that ends up manifesting in our life.
Yeah.
And also too, like for sure, like I didn't mention it, but there's so many things that trigger me within myself because Gina was really good at certain things that were really hard for me, right? And so it's just interesting, like you said, Kristen, such a teachable moment that all of us had these, what I call like the first hurts, right? Like we all had this experience of rejection or all had this experience of feeling unworthy, right? But it's like, how did we deal with that? Or how was that dealt with? And then what was the emotional sort of signature of that experience? And like, how is that now playing out in your life? And to your point, you'd have to go back in time energetically because you're not really going back in time with the time machine, but it's okay. You don't have to go back in time with the time machine because all of those versions like live cellularly inside of you and within your subconscious, and you can change it. And I think your story and me and Gina too were such examples for people that like you can totally have wounds in your childhood and become like wildly successful and magnetic. Actually, I would argue that you're more likely to become successful.
100%.
Yeah. And we were talking about this before we started the cameras, but like if you you can let things trigger you or trigger you into ascension, baby.
Yeah, I have a thing that one of our clients made me that says never waste a good trigger because it's always an opportunity. And, speaking on the inner child thing, I think my favorite thing to do with my clients is inner parenting work, developing this inner mother, because at the end of the day, all of our inner critic voices come back down to our mom's voice most of the time, to some degree because of that attachment that was created when we were younger. And now we get to reattach to ourselves. And then again, that goes back to that inner security. It's like, I didn't have any platform for security or secure attachment or someone that was always going to have my back. But it's actually, from that pain and from that trauma is actually what makes me the kind of mom I am to my daughter. And it's also what's allowed me to become my own inner mother and be my own inner support system. And it's been such a journey to fall in love with yourself, especially the parts of you that you freaking hated. And so it goes back to that rock bottom moment and it brings us into these places and, situations that we would never do, we would never think, we would never go there. And so I'm so glad that you had those rock bottom moments and that guy left you, even though it's probably the worst thing ever, but it was the best thing ever. And now to create that as evidential proof for other people, like your clients and people in our audience now, that was the catalyst. And this is how we can start falling in love pain and falling in love with things not working out, because we can have the belief that it leads to the best things working out.
Yeah, I think when you turn your biggest challenge into your greatest gift, like that's the ultimate slay. You know what I mean? It's like you got to just be like, this is what my soul's here to do. It's like here to be an alchemist. It's here to like really walk through the fire and walk out alive and even thriving and better. And yeah, it's beautiful because in the middle, sometimes you can't see how it's going to turn out better, but it also helps you build a trust muscle, and trust muscles are really important. Trusting in God and knowing that source has such a greater plan than you know. And that's part of the surprise, back to what you guys were saying before, like you don't want to ruin the surprise. Like that's kind of how I feel about like people finding that they're a creator and like their source. It's like you wouldn't want to tell somebody that they're having a surprise birthday party. You want them to experience that themselves. It's like, don't ruin the surprise that you are God. Like you are literally a fucking creator. And when you find that for yourself, there's nothing better. Like I remember so many moments in time where I'll be having like a moment of gratitude and I'm like, that moment had to lead to this one. And this moment is perfect, you know?
Yes. Yes. I love that. Actually, I have those moments a lot with Sam because I had such terrible friendships before, and really terrible ones. And I always just think to myself that if I'm God, if I'm source and I wanted someone to learn this lesson, what would I do? And I'm like, I would take it away. I would make it so friggin' hard for them so that they would have to learn this on a visceral level. I would take, if they're attached to money and that's all they want, I'm going to let them have it and then take it all away, because that's how they're going to actually know. When I think about my daughter and I want her to learn about, whether it's conscious relationships, conscious friendships, she's going to have to go through the ones that treat her terribly so that she can see the contrast between what it actually feels like when it is the kind of relationship she wants. And so I always say to Sam that I'm so glad I went through the terrible friendships that I did, because it's what did allow me to show up as the kind of friend I want to be to Sam. But it also allows me to know so fully what this is. I can see that this is what a friendship should feel like, only because I know what one doesn't or what it shouldn't feel like. And so, yeah, I love that.
There were so many things you said, Kristen, that were so good. First of all, don't ruin the surprise party of realizing that you're a creator, because it's so amazing when you walk in and you're like, wait, I make all this? That's crazy. And then the other thing you said was that it's such a slay turning your biggest obstacle into an opportunity, because I was already thinking before you said that how we really are all here to go on the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously on the hero's journey, like every hero has to metaphorically slay this dragon. Otherwise, you just went on a walk.
Totally.
Like you did not go on a hero's journey. Like you have no stories to bring back. You have no wisdom. So I really do think to myself as well when I'm going through a hard time, relating to myself like a storybook character or a hero, if you will, going through that and knowing that that is sort of shaping me. Like that's actually creating me. Like, thank God. And when I think about you and you coming back from your rock bottom and alchemizing that literally created the person we're talking to.
Yeah.
Like, you're not this person who is smashing this podcast with wisdom and talking to your clients and talking them off the ledge of the fear of being seen had you not gone through that. And so I just want to take a moment for us to all thank our dark nights of the souls. Like just a moment of recognition for those sacred periods of time.
They are sacred.
They're sacred. It's literally like the caterpillar becoming the muck before the butterfly. Like you have to go there.
You have to go there. And like that's where all my wisdom comes from. It's so interesting because like even before my rock bottom, right before it, I remember I was like seeking knowledge because I was like, well, I need more things to teach. And I feel like my soul knew. It was like my soul, like I was getting bored with what I was teaching. I was like, I need more things to teach. It's so weird looking back now.
And you're like reading books. You're like, what should I talk about?
Literally, that's what I was doing. And now I went through that and I feel like I can just like spit wisdom from lived experience. Cause I'm like, I've been there and I've been to the darkness and I've been back. And it's like, I knew now it's just like so clear that my new thing that I say is Ishvara Pranidhana. I don't know if you guys are yoga girls, but like it's one of the 8 limbs of yoga. It's the last one. And Ishvara Pranidhana means surrender to God. And now when I've like, don't get something or I'm in the middle and I'm still not seeing, I'm like, Ishvara Pranidhana, surrender to God. And it operates under the belief that like everything is perfect. And if everything is perfect, my rock bottom was perfect. If everything is perfect, your breakup, somebody's job, losing their job, losing their house, like whatever it is, like it's perfect. And so I wanted to bring that back to say like, even if I can't get it right now, like Ishvara Pranidhana, surrender to God. I don't know, but like I don't need to know because it's all perfect, right?
That's so funny because mine is, it's all part of the logos. So if you're into stoicism, they talk about logos being like, right? I'm just like, it's all part of the logos. Like,
Yep.
AKA Drake's version of God's plan. Like it's the same thing.
Yes, exactly. So many ways to say it. But I wanted to say one more thing though, because, when you guys were talking about like Gina triggering Sam and Sam sometimes triggering Gina, I think that this can be kind of triggering for people who are trying to manifest or like want a relationship, but like this person, it's so easy. And this person, it's, this person has it and I don't. Like I found myself in comparison in the last couple months of like, why does it come so easy for this person? But, something that's really helped me that I feel called to share is like, you really have to also look at your own soul contract and maybe their soul contract too. Like if your soul contract is to master relationships with yourself, then you might have more relationship hardship than Gina, who is here to master the fear of being seen and being her authentic self. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes what you're struggling with is your lesson. And what they're struggling with is their lesson. And that's why I hate comparison. I think it's such a waste of time to compare because you really just got to stay in your own soul's lane. Like it's not about them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think just getting older, you realize that whatever your beliefs are about people having a great life, like trust me, we all get our own fair share of suffering. Like, don't you worry about it. Like there is actually not a person who's avoided suffering really well. So don't worry. No one's having a better time than you. Someone may have already gotten to the other side of their suffering, and that may be the point that you're viewing them from. But everyone's gone through it. And actually, whenever I see people that I perceive to be like really lucky or doing really well, I always think about what they had to go through to get there. Like that is not an automatic state. That is something you work through to get. I mean, look at your story, right? If people are listening to this right now towards the end of this podcast, they're like, damn, like I just started following her last week, but I didn't know all this, right? Like you know what I'm saying? Like you don't talk about your rock bottom every day on your page, and neither do we. We don't always talk about our dark nights of the soul, but I want everyone to know that they happened. Like we are not hosting this podcast and showing up online and sharing what we've learned, having not gone through anything. And something you said earlier was, I really just reach into my past experiences for the wisdom. Frankly, it's not wisdom unless you lived it.
Yep.
Period. It's just information. It's just words. And so people don't even want to learn from people who don't have and carry that energy of wisdom and lived experience. Like that's why we love Eckhart Tolle. We're like, you're old, tell me, right? Like he's lived it, right? And people can feel
and it's
that
a
in
frequency.
their bodies.
You can feel it.
It's a frequency.
Yeah.
Yes, you can feel it.
It's
and
integrity.
It's integrity. And I think low-key, I think that's why people love listening to the Spiraling Heart podcast, because we share from our lived experiences and we invite guests who have also lived these experiences.
I love you, Sam.
I fucking love you too. Thank you so much for sharing just your wisdom. And thank you for adding that piece. I really like that to round up this conversation. Gina, let's throw with the final question.
Well, you probably know what the final question is.
I don't know. I don't remember it. So
all right, perfect. Well, since this is the Spiraling Higher podcast and we talk about these themes that, we spiral through consistently throughout our life, we always like to ask our guests, what are the themes that you spiral through consistently throughout your life and kind of come back from a different perspective? Maybe it's one, maybe it's a few. We'd love to hear them.
I think I hate to be repetitive, but it is that self-security and self-worth thing.
Yeah.
From all the friendships I've lost, from moving through my money blocks, from overcoming the fear of being seen, the root is just self-worth and finding security within myself. And so I know we've talked about it so much, but for anybody literally struggling with any problem, it's like your job is to realize that you are the answer to your problem. And I'm going to leave it at that. Like, you are the answer. No matter what that means to you, that's what it means to you. Like, you will figure it out, and you figuring it out will make you the version of yourself that you are aspiring to be.
Ooh, that's a mic drop. That's it. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Kristen. I'm so glad you got to meet Gina today in the studio. This was a dream come true for me. I love both of you so much. And I really feel like our energies were just like pow, pow, pow. Like, it was just like the most amazing energetic co-creation. And I really hope what people gain from this is that you become the person you're meant to be through what you're going through.
Yes.
Like, that's actually, like, that's your medicine. And so take it, integrate it, learn from it, and always believe that the best is still yet to come.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. And thank you, Spiraling Higher community, for having me as well.
We love you so much. And we'll make sure to put all of your links in show notes so that they can find you, all about your program and anything you have to offer. I think you also have inner child meditations, right?
I have lots of meditations. I have a Scared to Seen entire program if you are struggling with the fear of being seen. And I also have a lot of new things coming up, so you can find them all on my website.
Amazing. I can't wait for you guys to dive into more of Kristen's work. We'll have all of her links in the show notes, and we will see you in the next one. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this honest conversation. We hope it brought you peace, clarity, and a little bit further along your spiritual journey.
If you loved this episode, it would mean the world to us if you left us a 5-star rating and a review so we can bring you more conscious conversations, spiritual topics, and guests.
And we lovingly invite you to join our free Spiraling Higher community by clicking the link in the show notes to continue this healing dialogue and share with us how this episode impacted you.
Come on in, introduce yourself, and meet your conscious besties in a safe space for healing conversations between us and other like-minded people on their healing journey.
Here's to Spiraling Higher.